Hey everybody, it's Nathan Cabrera, and I am here with a lovely special guest today. You are watching the Trip Ups and Triumphs podcast once again. And if you've been staying with us, you've been hearing about the journeys, the comebacks, the successes, and everything in between as it goes on to the journey of life. And my next special guest has a quite extensive biography, and I personally have the privilege of knowing her. She was a former boss of mine, and she's been able to put up with me for many years. I'm so excited to have Nicki Fiocco with us today. Nicki, how are you doing?
I'm always great. You always have to be great, right?
Yes. And that's one thing that I've always appreciated about you is you've always had a lovely, bubbly attitude that's been exuding like transformation, positivity, encouraging. And I find that to be very attractive and very like rewarding and warming. It's just so easy to connect with someone like you, even if you're having a dookie day. It's like, hey, let me go see or talk to Nikki. She's gonna make me feel better.
There's always a silver lining, right? It's always about what's the lesson. And not to be like toxic positivity, but like it's not the situation, it's our response to the situation.
Yeah.
And I just feel like if we can think about that and we got to feel the emotions, we got to feel the anger and the anxiety and the frustration. And then we have to take a step back and go, okay, but what am I trying to learn here? What can I learn? How can I be a better person? How can I move forward in a different way? I feel like so many of my experiences have been about I don't want to be that kind of person. You know what I mean? I don't want to show up that way.
Well, one thing I can acknowledge when I hear you and have had the opportunity to work with you is that there's so much realness. There's nothing fake. It's not like cookie cutter or manufactured. It's very real, and I like that you address the toxic positivity, but also like the realness and rawness of other parts of our lives and our experiences, and that's something that is just I think is super rare. Now, you do have a hot date tonight, so I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time, but I didn't appropriately like introduce you and your bio and all these wonderful things that you're currently experiencing. So, how about you tell me what you're all and the viewers what you're all about?
Well, you're funny because I sent you the thing and now I need to find the thing.
Oh, yes, please do. It's like
Hold on.
I was stuck in traffic before, like, I got everything in here, and it's so nice to be
Oh,
on, like, virtual video because you don't have to see how awful the background actually really is. I can just put the image right here and be like, "Yeah, this is the studio, and this is what we're working with." I don't know if you like my little at right there at Trip Ups Podcast. I ordered
very
that, and
cute.
this is the first episode that I think I'm featuring.
I just have moons.
Yes,
I
I
just
do
have
remember how much you like astrology.
Oh, and it is factual. This is the time to really lock in, and it should be something that you want to do and not something that you have to do. And Mars actually moves into the eye of the sun. So, this is when ideas really start to culminate over the next, like I said, 6 to 9 months. So, I don't know. Take it,
Girl,
leave it.
you've been studying. I don't even think I can name all the planets, let alone like know all that you know about them and
Oh
its
my
movements and
gosh.
shifts. So I'm just kind of like, yeah, like just tell me what I got to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is you want to think about legacy. You think well, you want to think about what are you building? What do we need to get to? And it's very much how if I want to get to here, what are the steps in between that I have to do? But you don't want to do anything that you aren't called to do. But there's some things that you're going to have to do that aren't so much fun. So really thinking about like where do you see yourself in the next 9 months? By June, what do you want to have set in place to make sure that it's growing over the next half of next year, 2026? That's the advice I give advice to folks. I'm also a strategic connector. We know that, and implementation and focused leader. I have over 2 decades of experience advancing civic education, national service, and cross sector partnerships. Partnerships and networking and connections are my superpower. I'm really excited to be on your podcast, Nathan. Number one, because like you said, we worked together and we worked to create those connections and that networking. It was all about building those partnerships. And through that, I was able to build the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. And like I mentioned before we hit recording, is that we're at our 93rd episode. And that might sound amazing, but there's 1.3 million AmeriCorps members that have gone through service. So it doesn't even scratch the surface of those stories of alumni voices that showcase the real world experience that their services support national service across the country. And just a small plug here, won't get super political, but AmeriCorps is kind of on the chopping block. So if you have gone through national service or it's something that you're called to, just let your representative know that it's something that we should probably consider keeping in America's culture. We'll
Yeah.
just say it that way.
No, and feel free to talk about whatever, however, whatever, and, I
Okay.
won't be
We don't have to
offended.
skirt around any subjects.
Nope. One thing that I definitely wanted to achieve during my tenure as a podcaster is to really hone in on, like, the realness and rawness that people have and be okay and appreciative of so many differences. So many guests that have come on the show already that have such impactful stories that differ completely from my own. First off, congratulations on the AmeriCorps Connections podcast, and I assume that people can follow if they search the AmeriCorps Connections podcast, and it's featured typically where?
So we're on YouTube and all of the streaming podcast
Platforms.
platforms, Spotify, Apple, everywhere. But we do also have a YouTube account.
Yeah. One thing also, just reverting back to the fact that your superpowers, I would say a key element definitely stems from your networking capabilities. And I too thrive off of that. I know the value of networking. I always tell people all the opportunities that I've ever had ever came from networking. It's about like who you know. Yeah, your skills are great, but how am I going to get in front of somebody if they don't even know who I am? They don't care unless I have made that connection. That's how we met, essentially, through a
Yeah.
partnership from a previous nonprofit that I was working at and your previous work that eventually hired me, which was incredible. I know I've said this before, but I have so much gratitude when it comes to like my career, and I have you to thank so much for that. To entrust me at like a tender 25-year-old age and seeing like an opportunity like for a level of like enough maturity and learning, but also a growth opportunity. You didn't look at me and say like, "Oh, this guy is green or doesn't know what he's doing." Like he has enough like passion and heart. And I don't know, I don't want to fill like words or make this about me, but it just really showcases like who you are as a person and just how much I
Thank you.
value you as an individual because you've left a mark, you've left a legacy. You helped change, like you always say, I'll steal some of your words, trajectory of my life because I always thought, "Oh, I'm just going to do good things for people locally." And then I had the opportunity to do it for the state. And now I'm doing it on a federal level,
Yeah.
advancing my career that way. So I'm just like so thankful for you. I always say that.
It was so much fun. Those were the heydays. It was so much fun. And I want to add on to what you said about your skills are important and it's who you know. And I will add on to this, and I don't know if I coined this, and if I did, I need to trademark it, but it's not just who you know. It's who knows what you know and who
Mm,
you know. Because that's when somebody's thinking about a project and they're like, "Oh, Nathan would be really great at this. Nikki would be really great. Nikki." And I've had that happen to me like literally was about a month ago. I'm just working in my pajamas. I don't even know if I've brushed my teeth yet. And I get a text from somebody that was like, "Can you jump on a Zoom call? We need your brain." And I'm like, "Can I brush my hair?" But
yeah.
and it was this huge like project through I'll just say with Idealist, and I was like, and they just needed me to like riff on some of the things, but they knew what I know and who I know and how to get things done. And actually, one of the things that I did was they wanted me to make the connection. And I said, "I actually think this person who you already know is a better conduit for that relationship." So I think
Wow.
that's important too when you do your connections and networking. It's not that I hold all the doors that I get to open up for everybody. It's that I can look at the apartment and be like, "Which door, you know what, you need to go over there," because they're the ones that actually have better connections than I do.
Mm.
So that whole thing about it's it's about who knows what you know and who you know.
No, that's really good. I love that. And yeah,
Thanks.
get a trademark or put it on a shirt. I know a
It's gonna
guy.
be on my book.
Yeah, there you
Oh, I
go.
know a guy.
I love it. And yeah, I just love that you are an out of the box thinker. And I don't know, I feel like that gets a bad rap sometimes because people are like, "Oh, that's people that can't be tamed or can't be under leadership." I'm sure we've heard like different comments before from our, leaders or just people that we've worked with on, they might not be able to vibe or understand us fully, but we need the Nickis of the world to be penetrating and causing disruption, and it's good disruption, right? It's healthy, it's just eccentric, and it makes things not lame. It keeps things exciting.
I like it.
Yeah, and then there was another part that you had covered too, just about, like, AmeriCorps service, and I'm sure a lot of my viewers might not even know what that means, so can you help me and our viewers, like, understand, like, what civic, innovation and opportunity for service is all about and who could be, like, partakers of that?
Yeah, and I always do a terrible job of explaining what AmeriCorps is, but essentially it's a federal program that allows folks to serve a term of service that could be anywhere between 300 hours, which is approximately, I think, 2 or 3 months, up to 1,700 hours, which is almost a year in your community addressing critical community needs, which could be anything from housing to environment to economics to healthy futures. And that's such a weird term. What does healthy futures means? But it means like educating folks about diabetes and talking to people about like access to food. So it's a federal program that's supported and there's so many different streams. And this is one of the things that I'm so like when I was, so I'm an AmeriCorps alum. And so I was boots on the ground doing the thing and environmental education, teaching people about, I live in the Chesapeake Bay area. So teaching people about the health of the Bay and why oysters were important and, cultivating this oyster collective that we were going to put out in the Bay. And it was super fun. We had like Girl Scouts and boots on the ground, right? And then I moved to the level of program manager with Volunteer Maryland, where now I was working with a bunch of different sites that were doing different things. We had some AmeriCorps members that were focusing in volunteer management in food distribution or tax reform, not reform, but doing
Preparation.
taxes,
Yeah.
tax preparation. Thank you. All over and then environmental, right? And so I was like, whoa, this is crazy. But I was managing then I moved to the director level where I got to step back and I was like, whoa, there's like 17 of us doing this across the state. And every
Wow.
member is doing something different. And I'm like, wow, this is an amazing impact. Then I moved to that 30,000, 50,000 foot view. And I was like, in the governor's office, Maryland governor's office of service and volunteerism, where now we had a portfolio of all these different programs, but we were connecting to different states. So I could see the massive impact of communities and programs and businesses and people and in states and everything at this huge level. And now with the podcast, what's so cool is now I'm literally in the stratosphere. Like I'm sitting on the moon. I'm talking to NCCC members. I'm talking to folks who have gone through Peace Corps, talking to folks who have gone through AmeriCorps seniors. And so now there's this stratosphere of service that is having like this. So there's meta, and all of these services have these micro impacts in our communities across our country, and also with the individuals that are serving in these.
Yeah.
I don't think I did it very much
No,
justice.
I
That's
think
where
that
we're
you
at.
worded it as perfectly as possible, and it is such a, like, a complex, nuanced
Yes.
field, if you will, especially when people, don't understand the terminology or the culture, but from the gist of it, it's folks doing service and helping to impact communities for the greater good, and I think that is just a lovely thing to support, want to be a part of. I don't know, I've kept, in touch with like former members and also like your podcast and everything that you're doing for the most part. And that's why like I was like, I really would love for you to be featured and to like, share with
Yay.
other potential viewers that want to know more and how we can support the cause or how people can get involved and just highlighting and amplifying that type of messaging. And in addition to that, it's just like I think it's really cool that you didn't take the ball. I mean, like you created it, like because no one else really had any ball rolling in this kind of element or area of utilizing their expertise and using it in a way, especially in this time, right? Like it's not a peak time to be promoting this type of thing. Not a lot of people are giving you kickbacks or if you will to like say, "Hey, we wanna bolster your messaging because we have all this funding to do that, and this is a great thing that you're doing." From the sounds of it, you're doing it because you're really passionate about it. So I think that's really
Yeah, and ultimately, I'll just say for the purposes of the podcast is our mission is super simple. It's to reach as many AmeriCorps alums as possible and lift up their stories of service, build community, and just continue to get things done. I mean, that's
yeah.
bottom line that. But I think that you could agree to this. When we started working together, I think in 2016,
2017.
2017,
We were probably
2017.
talking in 2016. We were making things like making the sprinkles, to get
Yeah, yeah,
started.
yeah, yeah. And maybe we can talk about how to manifest stuff. But how many times did you hear me say, I was listening to this podcast. I was listening to this podcast. And
Oh my
nobody was
gosh.
listening to podcasts,
How did I
right?
miss that?
Yes.
How did I miss that?
Like every day, I'd be like, I was listening to this podcast. Nathan, I was listening to the podcast, and we should do this, and we should do that. And Sharon, I was listening to this podcast. And you guys were like, your eyes would roll back and be like, what is this podcast thing? And
Yeah.
I'm like, listen to podcasts. So here we
And now
are.
you have one that you can listen to and others on the ride now. That you'd be like, "You need to listen to this podcast now." Like, I'm not doing no more free promo for someone else's. We're going to
I know.
Nicki's. Speaking of which, I don't know if you remember this, but, like, there was, obviously some time before, like, we actually started professionally working together, and the time leading up to me being, like, hired for the position at the time was a crap show because I don't know if you remember, my license was suspended. Like literally
Yes.
when like I was supposed to be hiring or doing paperwork in like I don't know, I always call it state capital. I'm always getting it wrong. In Annapolis somewhere. I was supposed to go like and do a follow-up appointment and I was like, holy crap, because I literally got pulled over on an appointment for my old job and they did not come back after like 2 minutes. And I was like, what the heck? Because I don't know, they can scan and see that I didn't have insurance, but I did have insurance. But for some reason, MVA didn't know, motor vehicles didn't know. And so the cop came back and he's like, your license is suspended. And I was like, that's impossible. What do you mean it's suspended? When was it suspended? And he said like the date. It was like 2013 or 2014. And obviously it was like 2017 at that point. And I was like, my license has been suspended for 4 years. And he's, yeah, apparently. And I was dead because first off, that was over like, I think I had like really dark tints on my car. I was young, had a repair order, which I did do, but somehow the messaging wasn't, escalated to the right place. So he had to ride me to work. I couldn't drive my car. He at least let me pull over and he drove me to work. And like literally the following week, I was like working for the state at that point, and I had to tell I always share a little too much sometimes, and I was telling him I was like, yeah, my license was suspended, but it wasn't anything that was like intentional. I didn't do anything bad. But anyway, I just had to share that because that's these stories like that are still happening. Though, thank you for still accepting me after the fact. um, I don't know if you know, but Trips and Triumphs typically covers as well as just like the journey to your now or journey, like how did you even get here? You to kind of like, if you're okay with it, sharing like even like how you got to where you are currently, but just how you got into like the process of being in service. Like I know your story. I think other people could definitely relate to your shoes. I think a lot of people would truly relate to your story or just find it inspiring on how you got to the point where you were involved in acting, on behalf of like service and these opportunities. So can you take us back to a time, young Nikki? I don't know where that is. Is it 2010? Is it later or older? Forgive me if I don't know. But just like who were you? What was going on in your life? I can make some assumptions, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah. No, thank you for the opportunity to be able to share the story. Full disclosure, I am working on a book and it's called The Common Denominator, or I'm hoping it's going to be called The
Yeah.
Common Denominator because ultimately it always comes back to you. And that's the lesson that I've been learning over the last 3 decades is that how, like we had talked about, how you respond and react to situations creates your reality. I actually think my story of service started when I was around and I don't know what year it was. Maybe it was 2006. Maybe it's
Okay.
2004, but I was around and I had already had 2 kids by then. I was in a marriage and I was sitting around a fire and everybody was talking about their experience in college. And I was like, "But I want to go to college. Like, I had my associate's degree, but I was like, "Why? But I want a bachelor's. I wanna have a certificate on my wall," which I do. I actually have 2
Yeah.
now. And yeah, and so I decided, I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna go back to school." And I'm gonna go back to school, and I thought that I was gonna go back just to be a teacher. I was like, "I don't really care what I do. I just want the certificate. I wanna say that I did this." And so I walked onto the UMBC campus, and I'm sorry, folks, but, like, yeah, with a pen and a piece of paper going, "I'd like to apply to your college." Like,
Back in the
when I was
day.
back in the day, folks. And I actually ended up in the Environmental Studies and Geography and Research Center. And there was a guy, Chris Swan, and he was in his office and he was like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I like want to apply for college." And he's like, "Okay." And we had this conversation and he told me about this study at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, of environmental studies in geography and research. And I was like, "Wait, you can like study the environment and like trees and well, I want to do that. I don't want to be a history teacher." So that dove me into that. Like, I really, obviously, for actually, I think it took me about 5 years because I was juggling family and all that stuff. That brought me to geography and environmental studies, which kind of looped into a lot of volunteerism because obviously it's the environment. It's like pick up the trash, clean the bay, do the things. We need, tragedy of the commons, all of that stuff that I learned. And so after that degree, it's actually kind of funny. I remember standing in my advisor's office, Sandy Parker, and he said, "Nikki, you need to apply for graduation." And I was looking at his office and it overlooked like the swimming pool and certain areas on the campus. And I turned around to him and I go, "I don't want it. We're outside there's so scary." He goes, "You're going to be fine." And I'm like, "What if I don't do anything? What if I can't figure anything out?" He's like, "You'll be fine." I figured things out, right? So after that, after I graduated, I just, it was kind of a ride, Nathan. It really was. This is also a time where I started to understand the importance of self-talk and the importance of keeping your expectations of what the universe is going to deliver to you very, very high. And I know in your terms, like what God is going to give to you, like there's a realm out there where you just don't know, but you have to stay open to it. So I applied for an internship at the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. The Smithsonian, like
Ooh.
literally, the Smithsonian, like who am I? Right. And
Yeah.
I'm 32 years old, 36. I don't know how old I was. And I got it. And when I went in for the interview and then I started to develop a relationship with the guy, a professional relationship with the guy who did the recruitment, he's like, "There were over 350 applications and yours
Wow.
stood out." And that's the gift of God. That's the gift of the universe. That's the gift of you being so open to whatever's going to happen. I believe it's going to happen in the highest, I don't even know what the word is for me and the rest of
Yeah.
the. So I had a fantastic time there. And then I learned about this job that I was going to try to interview for, which was a volunteer coordinator in Anne Arundel County. I didn't even know it was AmeriCorps. I really didn't know. Sorry, AmeriCorps. You have terrible branding. We're working on it.
Bloop.
Bloop. So I did that and, I got the job. And funny story about that is that I had an interview in Anne Arundel County, but then I had to go to Baltimore. And personally at this time, I was actually starting to go through a divorce and starting to figure out the world.
Mm.
I was married when I was 20. So I was in my mid 30s. And so I was like, "Oh, how do I figure out this world by myself?" And my car got towed in Baltimore.
Jeez.
So you want to talk about God telling you that you have to learn something? I had to call my ex-husband and ask him to help me get to my car.
Fudge.
Fudge. Totally.
I was gonna ask, like, what was the hardest part of that season? Because you're juggling kids, you're juggling a new, like, understanding of yourself, career, obviously the relationship. What was the hardest thing?
Yeah, I mean, that was hard, right? Like having to call your ex-husband and be like,
Pride
"So I
had to go
know
out the window there.
we're not on great terms, but can you help me find the car?" I think one of the hardest terms, and for anybody that divorce sucks, and it just is not. You think you want to do it, and then whatever that could be a whole other series. Figuring
We
out
got time,
how to
honey. No, just kidding.
figuring out how to balance, like, my career was budding in my mid-30s.
Mm,
So, you talk about when you came to Volunteer Maryland in your mid-20s. I was and we talked about, you and I literally talked about this, where I was thinking like Gen Xers, or millennials, but I was such a Gen Xer, right? Like, or Gen Z or whatever, Gen Xer, right? Like, I was so, my age range was like, I don't really understand this social media thing, but I was like, let's do this thing,
mm,
right? And I was like, let's get into this. So, anyways, balancing this new career and ambition that I had with this new responsibility that I had on my own was challenging. And I will tell you, because I'm 10 years out of that, I did a good job because they're all coming home for Christmas this year.
yay! No, that's really incredible, and it's, like I said, a testament of, your personal journey and just how people's journeys can evolve over time. What you're sitting in, whatever funk you're in right now, it's not forever, right? It's
It's
setting yourself
not.
up for the next part of the chapters, and I'm sure you've gone through funky chapters, but, it's ebb and flows, and all the things that you went through and what you're doing now, and what you've already done that I know of, it was from that one application to UMBC or that Smithsonian opportunity, and then that AmeriCorps opportunity, and then, program manager, then director, and then public speaker, and now hopefully soon to be author, which is just it's impeccable. Like I said, it is really inspiring and it's exciting because it's like, hold yourself. You said that self-talk. I have had to learn that
Yes.
so much. And I think a lot of that I learned through my experience working with you, but just that tenure, those 8 years of evolving as a human being, because self-talk
Yep.
is an incredibly powerful thing, and it can be good or it can be bad. So just the fact that you convince yourself and talk to yourself in a what I assume to be a polite way to encourage you to make it to the next stage of your life is good. And I'm sure it was hard as well, like during those times you were facing those things. So yeah.
Yeah. I think too, like, I think when we think about self talk, we think about affirmations. And I think I've kind of, for me, it's kind of evolved from like, you are doing the best you can and you're going to show up the best you can. And that's kind of stuff of like, how do I want to feel?
Mm.
Because feeling creates a vibration and feelings create attraction. And so it's more like, how do I want to feel? I do a little bit of coaching as well. I know you do too. And a lot of times when people are thinking about, what are the next steps? What are the next steps in my career? What are my next steps in my relationship? And I'm like, well, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel when you go into work? How do you want to feel when you're working with coworkers? How do you want to feel when you're doing your work? And that puts you more in a mindset of, instead of a human doing, and more of a human being. Because it's like,
Mm.
how do I want to be? How do I want to be in the moments that I'm awake and doing stuff on this planet? And so I think that's where my evolution has come from. It's not just the self talk or affirmations, because the universe or God knows how you really feel, right?
Mhm.
Sorry, folks, you're
Yeah.
an open book to all of those sources, but they know how you feel. They know when you're in appreciation. They know when you're in frustration. They know when you're in anger. They know when you're blocking people. And if
Mhm.
you can tap into that and you can say, at this moment, I am super angry, but I want to get to revenge, because actually revenge is a higher vibration than anger or despair. I know it sounds crazy, but it really is. Because then you can get to appreciation of where you're in the position of like, I actually have autonomy to do these things. And then you can get into gratitude and joy. And that's one of the things that I've learned. It's not just necessarily affirmations in your brain. So,
No, that's beautifully put. It's taking it again to that rudimentary thought process, which is that self-talk, that affirmations, and taking it to the next level of in-depth work and conclusions. So again, don't expect anything less from you, but I have so many thoughts in my head right now, just like looking back at those pivotal moments. I don't know what it is about the brain, but sometimes, like, you can remember the most random thing that was, like, at 2 years old or 4 years old or and it might not even have, like, major weight or trauma or anything involved, but you just remember those little spurts of moments. And one moment that I'm, reminded of, because one thing that I had been working on the last, like, decade is being confident and sure of myself. And when I talk to people, they're always so surprised about that because I had really low self-esteem. I had really low, like, self-confidence when it came to so many parts of my life, and I don't know what caused that, but I was always very hard on myself, and I think that stems from, like, that parental influence. It's like, "Hey, you're doing well, but you're not doing good enough." Like,
Mhm.
it's A minus. Why didn't you get the A?" Things like that. I do remember, like, we were, like, getting prepared for, like, a training. You're like, "Oh my god, what is he gonna talk about now?" But I have a couple things actually, and don't get mad at me, but, I might set you up on something. But, anyway, you were trying to get prepared for an important training, and me and my anxiety, something that was so new to me that I didn't know that I had, because I actually started therapy right when like, maybe a year into, like, working at that job. It wasn't because of the stress, it was just because, like, maybe there was no stress in my life,
No,
and
there
now I was like, "Hey, you gotta deal with this stuff that you buried for, like, a
yes,
decade now,"
yes.
'cause
That's
it
the
wasn't
thing.
tumultuous, but, you had, like, stopped that 1 second because I was getting anxious because I was seeing that you were getting, like, maybe, like, not worked up, but you were just in a different mode of, like, "Hey," like, I mean seriousness, I mean business, and there was, like, other people that were involved that maybe weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, and so, like, I took it as, like, "Oh, she's mad at me. Oh, there's something wrong with me." Like, "What's going on?" So I'm just, like, walking around like a puppy dog, like, What do I do? What do I do?" And you actually put your hands on my shoulders, and you're like, "You, it's okay." And, like, instantly, like, my body itched. You probably don't remember that, but it was, like,
No, I
such
know.
a need. It was like my inner child saying, like, "Oh, yay." Like, I'm a people pleaser too, so I was like, "Oh, it was nice to get that support or that verbiage," and I think that there's so many reasons why you're a good leader, but leading somebody like me who, is I don't wanna say I was fragile because I was definitely a workaholic, and when something excited me, I definitely gave it my all. I like to prove myself every time, and I also like to show off, but there was those other parts where just, like, dwindle me in a corner, and you fed those parts of me that were just like, "Hey, look, like, I'm just gonna help elevate you and lift you up there." So, that's just one thing I'll say, and then one of the other things that I definitely gained through, working together and just the setup or the makeup of the organization is communication, and I
Mhm.
always have prided myself as being a great communicator. I've won public speaking awards, I've dealt with business and different, opportunities, even if it's like something with a musical or a play, like it all takes some effective communication to portray a story. But there was still that element that I had needed more nurturing or growth that I was able to learn and discover through working together. Even I mentioned it earlier was like, what I'm hearing you say is, or it's like relaying the message from the messenger, because I think the root of so much turmoil and destruction stems from sucky communication. We have sucky communicators when it comes to relationships, friendships, intimate relationships, networking. It all needs good communication for it to be effective. So that's what I'll say. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, actually, hold on.
Oh, she's
So
bringing
I
out the good headphones.
no, it's the same ones. So I had this in my office. I don't know if you remember this quote, but it was on a filing cabinet. And it's the problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do. See, it was
And
meant to cover this.
yeah. And I agree. And the new thing that I've been hearing is clarity is kindness. Um, when I transitioned, so I was executive director of the Maryland's Governor's Office on Service and Volunteerism. Then I spent a year down in South Carolina, and then I just was like, I'm out. I don't, I don't, I don't want to be in these leadership positions for a minute. I want to take a step back. I loved managing people. I always say I like opening the doors and putting my hand out and being like, come on, you can do this. And people are like, I don't want to. And I'm like, yeah, come on, you're doing this, which is what I've done, what I feel like I did for you several times where you're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, go around the state and
Mhm.
do orientations. Tell people about our program. I don't care. Just figure it out. But there was so anyways, I took a step back because there's at that level, especially when you're in state government and the position's not supposed to be political, but it kind of is.
Mhm.
I just am not a very good navigator of that. And so I took a step back and I'm more of a project manager at this point.
Okay.
I have the title of director, but I do project management, right? And I do communications. And I can't tell you how many times there's miscommunication, exactly what you said, where it's the expectation of like, what is it that you want me to do? And what are the outcomes that you want of this project? And none of this is clear. And I think it's the dancing around of like what it is that you want to be done and what the other person wants to be done. And probably at that moment where I was just like, Nathan, I just need you to focus on what you need to do and not worry about any of the other stuff going on. Just focus on you, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, anyways, I just think that that's a perfect quote. The problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
I'm gonna have to write that
I
one
think I
down
might
again.
get it
A
tattooed on the back of
reminder.
my hand.
Yeah. Yes. Speaking of tattoo, I never thought I would get one, but I just got a tattoo last Friday.
Yay! Wait, I can't even see that.
Yeah, so
What
you're
is
like
it?
the first person to see it. So it's actually half of a butterfly, and it's supposed to represent transformation, and the
Mhm.
half being because I'm still in progress because, butterflies actually go, well, caterpillars actually go through a treacherous, a transformation, cocoon, and a butterfly. And if they even make it to that stage, so by the time they advance to this, it's like it's beautiful and it's a transformation. So I'm going through my own transformations in life. So I opted for this awesome butterfly that I'm really proud of. And it also has, because like my focus and my spirituality is so important to me, I've also added the numbers 7 times 70 in Roman numerals, which reflects how many times I'm forgiven. It's like a hyperbole of like how much I'm forgiven by God, because I don't know, I feel like I've done a lot of cruddy things, but I'm like, that doesn't have like the weight that it used to have on me, where I'm like, oh, I have
Mm.
to wear a mask and be this perfectionist and I have to be this person that, so that I can be approved by God. I'm already approved. That there's nothing that I can do to approve like
And you know that I'm not a religious person,
Mhm,
but I do love I love benefic message from that religion.
mhm,
And I don't believe that there's a God out there that's just waiting to be like, all these things that you did bad, right? Like, I
mhm,
really believe that in that tradition, there's the God that is in your corner, right? Is in
yeah,
your corner and is in rooting for you and sees you in a divine light that you can't even see yourself, and is rooting for you to be that spark.
yeah,
Because if you're born in his vision, or their vision, I don't know what you say anymore. They're rooting for you. They're like, "Oh my god, I had this plan for you." And yes, you're going to fall along the way, and yes, I'm going to lift you up. Yes, I'm going to forgive you. One of the things that two things butterflies when they go through that transformation, this is crazy and wild. With the caterpillar, not only does it go through a transformation, it dissolves, it melts
mm,
in the chrysalis to nothing, and then it builds within the chrysalis into a butterfly. And if you think about it, the caterpillar is crawling on the ground so it can only see what's in front of it, and it eats grass and it eats greens and it eats leaves. The butterfly relies on pollen. It's
mm,
not on the ground. It's never on the ground. It's always flying. It's always moving. It's not even the experience of the caterpillar. So it's not just a transformation of like, oh, I went from this experience to this experience. It's like a whole different. You moved from Dundalk to Italy, right? Like
mhm,
I'm getting like this whole other thing, and then the yeah, and then the other airborne transformational figure is the dragonfly. And
mm,
so they start as a water nymph. So they spend their life in the water, just swimming around, right? And then all of a sudden, when they do that same kind of transformation, they crawl up a stalk of grass and they start to morph into the dragonfly. And then they no longer do water except for drink it. They become a dragonfly that eats wasps. Remember that
I
terrible
had
wasp sting that I got?
yikes. We actually had wasp nests in our office. I don't know if you knew about that, but not my current
Oh,
office, but
yeah.
when we worked together, it was in my
Oh,
wall of my office. It had to be remediated, so that's fun. But I am gonna use this clip though, because anytime someone says like, "Why did you get this?" I'm like, "Well, let me." She explained it better for me, you know.
yeah. Yeah.
We are winding down. I do want to make sure that you have the opportunity to share anything that you have missed off before I share something with you that I want you to participate in, which is going to be fun. But is there anything that you wanted to let viewers know that you didn't get a chance to share? Maybe a bit about what you're doing now and or what they have to look forward to, Nicki Fiocco in the future.
Yeah. I mean, follow me at AmeriCorps Connections to learn about national service in AmeriCorps. If you're an AmeriCorps alum and you follow Nathan, which I'm sure you probably have been following all the folks from Volunteer Maryland, tap in if you're interested in being in the podcast, reach out. I am working on a mindset strategy and kind of a skill set for 2026 where I do some coaching, but I don't do a ton of coaching, but building out communities and supporting people on all the things that we talked about. I shouldn't even say that I'm working on it, but I'm really called to this book with common denominator because it's the biggest lesson that I've ever learned in my life, that no matter what you do, you're bringing yourself with you. So
Yeah.
you need to figure yourself out
Uh,
because he'll just
100%.
keep repeating repeating it over and over again. But I really appreciate this opportunity, Nathan. It's super fun to connect with you. It was great working with you.
Likewise.
One of the things I talk about when we started to work together is I said, one of the first things that you brought to us, and you brought so many talents and so many skills and so many treasures, but the first thing you brought to us was you guys use a lot of jargon that I don't understand.
Yeah.
So can we change that?
That
And I
communication
think that's
factor.
important. Yeah, and I think that's important, goes back to what you said about thinking out of the box, right? Like you can't you can't see the boundaries if you're within the box. You got to get people, and you got to be open to people to come into your sphere and see your blind spots, and that's a
Mm,
whole DEI sort of conversation, like where are your blind spots? But yeah,
yeah,
so thanks for having me on here for sure. And then what
absolutely.
are you
And
going to
when you
reel
get
me
your
into?
book, what's that?
I said, and what are you going to reel me into next?
Oh yeah. So we're gonna get into some things real quick. And I know you, like I said, you have a hot date, and I'm late for my next appointment. They're gonna kill me. Yeah. Well, for one, when you get your book out, we'll definitely share it, and I'll have to have you on the podcast again to tell us all the goods about it. But I've been building you up like crazy, so I got to knock you down a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with you. One of the funniest things I'm gonna drag you on, but I love it. So please don't hate me about this, okay? I always play a game with my guests. And so normally it relates to them or just do something, whatever. And I have to bring this out for you today. And it's a spelling bee. One of the things that I
No,
really love, come on, let's do it. It's going to be really
I
simple. It's going
can't
to be fun.
spell. You know I can't spell.
It's going to be fine. We're going to do 3 words. That's it. And if you totally suck at this, I can just edit this out. So the first word I want you to spell, no cheating, is service.
Of course. Service.
Ding, ding, ding. Your second word is chief.
Like Chiefs, like the
Yeah.
football team?
Yeah.
CHIEF.
I cheated one time in my entire life on a spelling test because I pride myself on getting 100%. That was one word that I had to cheat on because I was like, is it I before E or is it something else? So I needed to double check. And the last word is onomatopoeia.
Uh,
I don't think I can spell that one. So
well, when I did the Google search, it came up with Olympia, so I can't.
you're way
I
off
can't get
then,
with you.
right?
Yeah, I can't get with you. I
See,
totally cheated on all of it.
that's okay, but you had it. You had the right mindset. You used your resources. So that's what we
Of
learned, using our
course.
resources, using good communication, transformation. There was just so much that you covered. That was excellent. And I just want to say thank you again so much for your time, your beautiful spirit, and I can't wait to see what else you have coming out. Again, you can follow Nicki Fiocco on social media and also the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. Thank you so much for watching the Trip Ups and Triumphs podcast, where we go through the journeys of the highs and lows of life. I love you all. And until next time, I'm Nathan Cabrera, your host. Be well.